Hi, I'm Edwin Samuelson, and welcome to the CineFiles. We're back again, yet with another new show. This time we'll be talking about soldiers for hire, a.k.a. mercenaries, a.k.a. Ronin soldiers. But before I begin, let me introduce my co-host. To my left, Mr. Eric Cohen.
Ronin soldiers.
To his left, Jeff Galashaw, and to his left,
how are you doing?
Michael Phelps. But before I begin, let me just give us a little rundown what we're talking about today. We're talking about soldier for hire films. Basically, after
Soldier of Fortune.
Soldier of Fortune is another good term.
Mercenaries.
Actually, you could also call them Ronin. And actually, the term Ronin comes from the ancient samurai times where soldiers would...
This is just Edwin showing off.
No. I just think it's very interesting.
And we're not even reviewing Ronin.
No. I'll give you the term where
Ronin means samurai without a master.
Exactly. Very good. After the wars in Japan, the samurais the wars would be over and they'd have no employment, so they would become soldiers for hire, kind of like Yojimbo. Anyway, these are the same type of films. After, I guess, World War, soldiers become available for jobs, and they would take out personal contracts. All right, shut the fuck up. What's the first one we do?
What are we? Shall we start with Play Dirty?
Play Dirty.
Yeah, Play Dirty is a great one because that's around the World War II era.
Play Dirty.
Not really a mercenary film. It's more like a
Dirty
Men on a Mission kind of thing, which was the original name I wanted to call this.
Well, go ahead, call it. Okay, Men on a Mission.
Men on a Mission.
This film was directed
Mercenaries on a Mission.
This film was directed by Andrei Datoff, who, and this was his last film. He was a director who actually had one eye, and he directed a 3D film, and he couldn't see the 3D effects, and that film was
And it's
House of
considered
Wax.
one of the best 3D films ever made.
He had a House of Wax. He said he
there
couldn't
you
see
go.
the 3D, ironically. But this is one of his. This was his final film. It's produced by Harry Saltzman, who, if that name sounds familiar to you, was co-producer of the many of the James Bond films up until Live and Let Die. But let's start off with this one. This one is a British-made Dirty Dozen ripoff, really, isn't it?
Sorta. It feels, it reminds me a lot more of something like The Wild Bunch, where you have like two key characters and the rest are just like, scrappy, kind of like, we really don't want to be working with these guys kind of characters.
It does feel like the Dirty Dozen in the sense that you're dealing with a rogue element within the British military that has to do jobs that aren't going to be suitable for, the special forces or for regular grunts or something.
Right, but the real distinctive characters of that team are basically Michael Caine and
Nigel Hawthorne.
Nigel Hawthorne.
Who's excellent.
Who's very excellent. He turns out to be more of a leader. And Michael Caine is ordered to run this group, but it's
they're
Nigel
essentially
Hawthorne who turns out to be the
prisoners.
leader.
I mean, they're almost like convicts that are made to do this.
They've all been sort of shunned by society in some way. They've all kind of, Michael Caine has to sort of earn his stripes, so to speak.
And then one of the other soldiers, I think, are gay. They're not wanted in the armed forces, and they get basically all the rejects, and they put them on the suicide mission. And if they survive,
no, I think you're screwing that up with. There wasn't a gay soldier in Play Dirty.
I believe there was.
You're thinking of Wild Geese.
Well, in this one, either way, please forgive me. But anyway, there's a bunch of rejects, and they basically pick for a suicide mission. If they succeed, I believe they'll be free.
They're all the same.
Whatever. They're men on a mission. This one, I was actually very lucky to see this. I saw this. It was not on video until recently. I was actually lucky to see this on Lincoln Center on the Walter Reed, and it was a very amazing experience to see something like this on a scope print.
Now, why did they have this?
It was part of a retrospective of, I forgot, I think it was war films, and this was one that was not available, and they were able to get a print from MGM, and it was beautiful. I mean, it was amazing. There's a wonderful scene, actually, too, which, if you do see it in scope, is where there's a scene where they have to get their jeeps over this big giant mountain, and it's played off very slowly, but the tension starts to build, and it's really well done. Andrei Datoff is a very good person who's making these little montages, those little scenes that really stand out, and that's one that really stands out for me.
You know why this fits so well into the mercenary theme of this current show?
Please
is the fact that it doesn't feel like a World War II mission film, like something like Guns of Navarone.
I agree.
These guys really feel like rogues, but even more so than something like The Dirty Dozen, because you're still pretty cognizant that you've got soldiers in charge and running it, and it's still a military-style mission. This one, it seems like, just go out there, do your damage. It's a very cynical film, but it's very good, though. It's surprisingly good.
Jeff, feel free to jump in here anytime.
Well, I don't really have much to say about
Very nihilistic film.
Yeah, I don't really have much to say about the film per se. I find as I get older, I respect Michael Caine a lot more, but that's also because as I get older, I see a lot more of his classic work.
Oh, I thought you were going to say, I see a lot of myself in Michael Caine.
No,
I
I don't see a lot of myself in
Hey,
Michael.
Jeffy. That could be the movie. Jeffy.
But, I really enjoyed this film. I enjoyed Michael Caine, but really the real discovery is Nigel Hawthorne, who you might be thinking there's a gay character in this movie because in actuality, Nigel Hawthorne was actually gay.
That's the point I was trying to make, was that, yes, it's Dirty Dozen-esque, but it reminded me more of the Wild Bunch, where you actually have, you have the William Holden character and Ernest Borgnine character, and the other characters are just, they're stuck with them.
Yeah, but see...
So to speak. And in Play Dirty, you have the Michael Caine character and the Nigel Hawthorne character.
But not saying we got to discuss Wild Bunch, but I'd say I also paid really a lot of attention to the Robert Ryan character and the Ben Johnson character. I mean,
no, I know what you're saying.
Yeah.
That was, but the dynamic is you had these guys that they felt was beneath them.
That's a
That dynamic. I'm not saying they weren't memorable characters. Warren Oates is great in it, and so is what's his name? Who's all John.
Well, you get eight distinct. You get all these distinctive personalities in the Wild Bunch, and this one is just basically Nigel Hawthorne and Michael Caine. The
They're really the
really,
key thing,
yeah.
and it's also an interesting dynamic in that Michael Caine really isn't all that confident, a leader.
yeah, he's a bit of a smartass that doesn't know what he's doing.
Right.
That he thinks he's going into a situation where he thinks he's going to be the know-it-all, and he thinks he's going to be the leader. When Nigel Hawthorne, towards the beginning of the film, has to pull him aside and like, look, boy, you got to learn a lot about being out here.
But I will say this about
Heartbreaking
the film,
ending.
is that I know this is a
Doesn't ring
redundant
true.
point, but I also admire this film because a lot of filmmakers or screenwriters, or I don't know, the studios, they don't make films or characters like this anymore. And it really makes you appreciate these films a lot more, where the characters don't necessarily always do the right thing or make the right decisions, but you still like them no matter
They're
what.
layered and they're realistic characters.
Exactly, and they don't always do the most heroic actions. They do what's best for the team or for the mission. And I just really like all the films that we're going to be discussing today. And that was the point, because you could actually see all the actors playing the roles as these characters, whereas you get these like 25-year-olds who look like models, and we're supposed to believe these people have been stuck in the jungles of whatever continent, and that they're going to lead us to safety, and they look like they just came of an Abercrombie and Fitch ad.
Well, I gotta agree, it's a good one. It's definitely one of my favorites. I think probably
What
my favorite
mercenary and jungle film have you seen recently with models? I'm just curious.
Tears of the Sun?
Well, I haven't seen anything recently, no, because at least Bruce Willis, I can at least believe as a grunt. But when I have to sit through a film, I can't think of any title recently. But you're giving me like Paul Walker as the leader of this of an army unit. It's like, okay, and he's going to save us. This guy doesn't look like a mercenary. This looks like the type
Was
of
he
guy.
a soldier?
No, I said no movie in particular.
Right here.
I'm just using him as a general example.
Final thing I like, I gotta mention the final thing is you're talking about the nihilistic tone of the movie.
Yeah.
I like that. I think
I do
it's a
too.
very unique tone of a film. The one thing another thing I don't like, the ending really doesn't ring true. It comes out of nowhere and it just does not work for me as far as it's concerned. Some people say it does because the tone, is there, but I don't think so. But either way, it's a great movie.
I
Please
disagree
rent it.
with you. I think it fit in with the cynical nature of the film from beginning to end. I think it was depressing, but still.
Definitely one of the best entries in the series we're talking about today. All right, Lyric.
So let's go on. Want to talk about Wild Geese?
Well, I was actually going to talk about the next one because we're doing in the year they came out, so we got to talk about the one you chose.
Oh, wait, Dark of the Sun.
Oh,
Let's talk about Dark of the
yes.
Sun.
AKA
Dark of the
The
Sun.
Mercenaries.
Dark of the Sun is a film that I watched. The first time I saw it, it was on. I mentioned this in the show before. I spent my high school years in London, and they show really cool films on British TV. And one of the films they showed was Dark of the Sun. It had a really good write-up at Time Out London. It was airing that night, so I checked it out, and I was impressed with it because I thought it was surprisingly brutal for a film of its time, which was made in the late 1960s, just before The Wild Bunch, just before Bonnie and Clyde came out.
The year before the ratings quote came out.
Right, and there was stuff in that where I was just shocked. Wow, this stuff is in the movie that was made then, and there were things about that I liked a lot. I thought there was some very.
We need to mention
things.
something. We need to mention too. It was directed by Jack Cardoff, who, if you might recognize, is the cinematographer. Great cinematographer. Did The Red Shoes.
Mm-hmm.
He worked on The African Queen, and he also directed some very interesting movies in the '70s. He directed a movie called The Mutations, aka Freakmaker.
Right.
He directed a lot of horror and exploitation films. He was basically a lot like Freddie Francis.
But it's also like sort of a very cynical bent to it. It's about a bunch of mercenaries that are hired to go into a village in Africa. The gist of it is diplomatically they're supposed to save a town, but what they're really supposed to do is get these diamonds. And
Rod Taylor's
the
Jim
lead,
Brown.
and recently Rod Taylor was featured in Inglourious Basterds. He plays Churchill. which is a kind of a neat little nod on Quentin Tarantino's part. For those of you who are not familiar with Rod Taylor, he was in The Birds.
The Time Machine.
You know.
And this actually reunites the Time Machine lead cast, which was Yvette Mimieux and him in this film together.
And also Jim Brown.
And Jim Brown, and that's the football player.
And he delivers quite a good performance in this.
Actually, I gotta say, I was pretty surprised how good he was, but I had a problem here with
Better
the problem
than
with
Fred
the script.
Williamson.
There's a problem I love Fred Williamson. There's a problem I have though. The movie they write that he's he lives in this country and he was an exchange student, but yet he speaks perfect English. Like I didn't ring true.
It's a movie.
It's a movie. It's Jim Brown. It's not.
But he's pretty good. It's
And
the best
a nice performance from Kenneth Moore, who plays a doctor. He tricks into coming onto the thing because they need a doctor.
And who is the Nazi?
I don't know that actor's name, to tell you honestly.
I don't know what movie you guys saw, because this movie straddles the line between barely watchable and piece of shit. Mm-hmm. It is such a fucking... I was so mad that I wasted my time. Rod Taylor chews so much fucking scenery from beginning to... That ending, when he finds out his best friend... First of all, Jim Brown, he plays a character...
Don't spoil it.
Jim Brown plays a character I've never seen in any movie other than, like, Forrest Gump. He plays a saint. He's a saint throughout this film. He's a mercenary trying to free his country, but he's a saint. Everything he says is right, like telling Yvette Mimieux, he deserves a second chance. I don't think I'd want to fight you, man. I'd do it, but I don't think I'd like it. And I think one of the funniest things is one of the main sets of villains are journalists.
Okay, come on.
They make journalists into the bad guy. Mercenaries somehow are seen in a good light. Journalists are the racist guys calling Jim Brown a big ape and that he could barely speak English. And Rod Taylor goes, journalists, they only want to start a fight and then write a story. And the guy's like, wait a second. He's like, yep.
He actually saw
Shut
this movie.
your
He
mouth.
actually watched it.
Shut your mouth. You're not in shape enough. And the guy's like,
I'm loving this reenactment.
I'll pay.
And it makes the Africans, the Simbas they call them. They make them into this like horde that is like only.
Mike, do you have a cup for my change? I think you're.
But how's that any different than like the warlords you see in like Darfur and stuff like that?
That was.
I like the film.
Didn't have Eric Banning in this one.
I liked the film. But I had problems with it. I'll tell you, I had problems.
It is awful.
The whole
and they have what was the Nazi
character? Why was he there? Why was he there? I don't get that.
He had like a little battalion of guys that he was running, which is funny that a Nazi is leading a battalion
Who's wearing
of African
an actual
soldiers.
swastika.
And it's like a paper mache swastika that he takes off, and then he's like, "Put it back on after you shot the kids.
Right.
Put it back on."
But look, what the film established was that even though they're mercenaries, there still had to be a chain of command. That they were being hired to be soldiers, and they had
and the irony at the end when he does what he does to Jim Brown. Oh, the irony, because Jim Brown's the saint and
he's the one who saves his life.
Death.
But I didn't see Jim Brown as a saint. There was a justification for why he was there at that point, because of his background and his connection to.
No, but the character, the way it's written, like I said, he doesn't react to racism. He saves the Nazi from death.
Right.
He's trying to convince the girl that the leading man deserves another chance, and then he has that like phony ass speech about like, I wouldn't want to fight you. I'd have to.
I don't understand how this film is any worse than any film that might come out that time before that'd be considered just as kind of like kitschy or whatever.
I
just gave you all the reasons.
I thought Rod Taylor was very good. I thought
you made a great leading man.
I did have a problem with the Nazi because they didn't understand. They didn't explain why he was there.
The Nazi was a little too cliche. It was a little too like evil.
They knew not to trust his character.
Villain, yeah.
I thought that was poorly put in there. And there's some very bad continuity errors in the movie too.
I didn't like the ending.
The ending sucked.
The ending was very
get me court-martialed.
According to you, the whole.
And the guy's
the
like,
ending for me, like what I thought was interesting at the ending was like even Rod Taylor's character had to accept the fact that he's no better. Than the guy he just killed. I mean, and that was the whole point.
And he's a fucking Nazi.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
He's a fucking Nazi.
We're not supposed to have any sympathy for.
You're not
the guy and his like the third in command.
But he didn't take the proper channels. He didn't like take the character.
Kill that fucker.
Right.
What was he supposed to do?
Proper channel. I think it was supposed to file for paperwork. I'd like to kill the Nazi.
In the movie, they established that even though they're mercenaries, because they're a hired army, there is a certain chain of command. There's certain things that they have.
What's great is Chip Brown's like, no, we need him. And I kept waiting for him. What do they need him for? The only good thing
He was
about that was
cold-blooded more than any of them. He can kill children.
This is the best. Ron Taylor's driving the Jeep.
I'm sorry. This is a guy that loves
He's
loves
so mad.
Like,
He's so
I'm
mad.
not mad. I don't
beautiful,
begrudge
man.
your
the best
take
part
on the
is
film. I
he's
just
trying
think it's
to
funny that
outrun
there
him
are
on the
these films
Jeep,
that
and
you've
meanwhile
loved
the
in the past.
Nazis
Stop
like
all this
surfing
multiple
down.
talking.
But he's trying to surf down the stream on like this.
You know what the
bamboo
problem is?
raft.
You know why he doesn't like the film? There was no nudity. If Yvette Mimieux took off her clothes, then he'd be like, "Oh,
He's so
that
mad.
film was
Folks,
awesome."
But there was plenty of
This was
racism.
a his
There's
voice.
rape in the film. That's right. So that kills my
Male
theory.
rape too. Male rape. That's why he wasn't into it.
That was actually shocking.
There was some pretty shocking stuff. I mean, for the time, I thought. For the time, it was pretty graphic.
There's images where you see bodies with like removed limbs hanging next
I gotta
to
say, it's
side
well
and stuff
shot,
like that.
too.
And
The
the fact
film
that
is
he
well
has
shot.
the children killed was pretty like.
It is well shot too.
Well
It
shot.
has an interesting atmospheric film to it. But all right, let's get on to the next one, guys, because I think we said all we can say about that one. I'm
Yeah,
burned
I
out.
think Mike said everything.
I thought
God.
Mike's. I have to be honest with you. I thought you were more entertaining than the movie, even though I like the movie. But let's go on to the next one. The next
I was
one,
giving you line for line readings on it.
I'm impressed. You saw that movie.
Reenactment.
The next film was actually a huge hit. It was an independent film, one of the last films released by Allied Artists Films, and that was Wild Geese, which stars Richard Burton, Roger Moore, and Richard Harris.
Such
as a
fond
group of
memories of
soldiers.
this film.
I like this film. They are a group of mercenaries who go on a mission to Africa. And I'll tell you what, Eric. Why don't you just?
When I was in middle school,
good.
this was
Let me
like
tell
considered
that
like
Okay.
my friend's favorite movie for a while. Everyone would talk about, oh man, it's such a cool action flick. This was before action films really took off, and there was a lot of attention to like stunt work and stuff like that. And it had Roger Moore, and it had Richard Harris, and it had Richard Burton, and it had Hardy Kruger.
Oh, it was
Really,
very
we
good.
We didn't care about because we had no idea who he was at the time. But
He's very good at that.
But I just thought it was great because the uniforms and the guns and its mission, and it was like all this stuff. And it's an entertaining film. It really is. It's not a boring film at all. From beginning to end, you'll have a good time with this film. It is campy, maybe unintentionally so in certain parts. Richard Burton looks awful. He's so ill. He's so old.
Well, what's great is if you watch the behind the scenes on the DVD, it's funny because they say that during the training sequence where Richard Burton is working out with everybody else, you see him running, and he looks like he's going to die.
We had a bad hip at the time.
Well, yeah, and that's what they were talking about on the behind the
It's
scenes.
yet
that he had a
another
bad hip, and
corrupt
it's like,
government
no.
official hires
But it wasn't a
Richard
bad
Burton
hit.
to-
The guy was a severe alcoholic.
I think Liv Taylor beat the shit out of him.
You
That's why
have
I
him
think Havoc
working
will.
out at high
And it has an ironic twist where, suddenly the diplomat who hires them to go in there in the first place decides to switch sides because it's a better deal and therefore pulls the plug on the mission just as they're in the thick of it. So they have to find their own way out.
Well, I have to say, this, out of all the films we'll be reviewing today, was my favorite to sit through.
Really?
And yes, because I think, even though we were talking about, Men on a Mission film, I think, like you said, this one's the most campy, so it didn't feel like more was as much was at stake in this film as with the other films, because I can't really give you a reason. Plus, most of the cast is a little older, over the age of most Men on a Mission, and it's easy for me to go see anything with Richard Burton in it, even with him, looking sickly in
Exorcist
this
2?
film. I said anything with Richard Burton,
Wow.
and no matter.
I
how bad.
love these like little like left field things in the film. Like they have a character that is obviously gay, and they make a point that he's gay, and they have the character say all these like flamboyantly gay jokes, and stuff. But they're all like, ha ha,
Nobody
he may
minds.
be gay, but he's our gay man,
Yeah.
kind of like.
Even the hard as nails drill instructor finds him amusing.
Well, I also
Right.
like they have a soldier who'd rather go to war than stay at home with his wife.
And garden,
But-
yeah.
Right.
Exactly. I like that aspect. But I also felt they made you feel a deep sympathy for all these characters. So when one dies, you actually more feel it than like him just being a side character.
I gotta say,
Like,
they did
whatever.
very well in the film, all the actors, but my favorite performance was Richard Harris. He
He's
was very
wonderful.
good. Very good. in this.
Yeah.
It was odd for me to see him.
And he's the
young.
only.
And-
Well, I was going to
He's
say
the most
something.
rounded character.
Yeah.
And the most subtle performance.
He loves his
if
son,
you
I
can
remember,
have a
right?
subtle-
He has
Yeah,
a son
he has
who
a
he
son,
loves.
and
And I thought that was interesting, dramatic. Because he
I don't
takes the
know.
mission because he wants
Honestly,
to take
I
care
thought
of
the
his son.
kid was a little shitty brat.
But no, I understand.
But he deserves a
I like
drunk
their
as a
reasons.
stepfather.
I like their reasons for going. I like their reasons for going to war.
Well, I also
the training sequence where
Roger
they have the
Moore's
camera on Richard Burton
introductory
running with
sequence.
everybody. The guy looks like he's gonna have a heart attack.
Well,
Well,
yeah.
I liked Roger Moore's introductory sequence where they're trying to show how much of a badass he is, but also
I like
how
that.
more-
That was very
I'm
entertaining.
just saying that was one of my favorite sequences.
Yeah,
of the
that
whole
was very
film.
Actually,
entertaining.
what I liked about it is that I don't know why. I thought usually films like that, usually only one character comes out alive or something like that. I liked how you thought Roger Moore was going to die because they shot the airplane. He was the pilot. He got hit.
And he passed out.
But he winds up surviving in the end.
It's a fun movie. In fact, the movie was a really, really big hit, as I mentioned. And
Had a sequel?
It had a sequel, and in fact, Richard Burton
The
actually
Scott
signed the contract, and then he died the week they were about to start shooting.
And it's a terrible sequel.
I like the sequel because this one actually tried to take it in a realistic direction, but unintentionally, it's very campy. Where you have a plot where they need to rescue Rudolph Hess, the infamous Nazi
Laurence
villain,
Olivier
and it's
plays Rudolph Hess.
Laurence Olivier, who is in this terrible makeup, with these big bushy eyebrows,
And the only connection to the
hysterical.
original Wild Geese is Edward
Fox.
Fox
Yeah.
plays like the brother of Richard Burton's character. That was the way they connected to the original because they couldn't get Richard.
They
Burton.
couldn't because Richard Burton died, even though he
Yeah.
signed the contract. And it has Ingrid Pitt in it, who's in The Vampire Lovers. And
Well, Barbara
the other-
Carrera plays this reporter that hires them to for a TV sensation to go in and try to help Rudolph Hess.
By the way,
Let me
I have
say-
a copy of it on
Let
DVD
me
if you
say
want.
this. If I was a kid and I saw Wild Geese about the same time, Eric, I would have definitely been with you hanging out,
Oh, no,
loving
we
this
just-
movie, loving this movie. Matter of fact, I had such a good time. And when you say campy, I always put like a negative spin on
It's not.
campy.
No, it's not bad.
But what
campy.
I say is, instead of saying campy, I say it's like a pure popcorn movie at that time. It's like kind of check your brain at the door a little bit, not much, because there's I think that
It's not
that,
unintentionally
that
campy.
political speech that the leader that they're trying to reimpose into the leadership role in that country, when he's having that debate with Hardy Kruger, I thought that was pretty intelligent. But I had such a good time with this movie that I recommended it for my mom to see, who mom doesn't want to see any kind of like mercenary films or anything. And she saw it and she loved it. Loved it.
Well, we only got about 5 minutes, guys. I want to mention one quick thing before we go on to the next one. Hardy Kruger is phenomenal. In fact, he's in also, if you might recognize him from one of my favorite movies of all time, which is Flight of the Phoenix.
Yeah, he's great in Flight of Phoenix.
He's terrific in this
the
as well.
original, folks,
Not the remake.
Not
Avoid
the
the
piece of
remake.
shit remake.
The original is amazing.
All right, let's go on
All
to
right,
the film
the
you
final
like
film-
so much.
The final film is actually the most realistic film in the entire canon we'll be talking about today, and this one I really like a lot. The film is called The Dogs of War. It stars Tom Berenger and Christopher Walken, and this one takes a very interesting approach.
That's interesting that because Tom Berenger's in it for like a little bit.
Well, they're both.
Christopher Walken's your main guy.
They got shared billing, but I like this film a lot. This film I like because it really shows you a different type of soldier. I mean, they're working for very little money. Like I think it was like 25.
It gets into the depressing life these guys have outside of-
$50,000.
Yeah, it was like very little money. Just like wow, you're putting on this.
It's
mission.
a darker film. It's almost more like a thriller than an action.
But what
film.
was it? The mission to take over the country for $50,000, or was it Christopher Walken to go in and take those photographs of what?
No,
they
the
needed
mission was for him to
$50,000?
go in and reinstate
the dictator.
this dictator. That there
'Cause
was
the
like
oil
one
company.
coup.
Well, he had to originally go in and take the pictures,
Right,
and find out why this dictator, where he was in that compound.
right. But then they had
It's a very good movie because the acting in this is phenomenal. It's directed by John Irving.
I wouldn't say phenomenal.
Well,
Well, it's
Christopher
I
Walken
have
is
to
phenomenal.
disagree with you.
it's a great cast though. I mean, like Christopher Walken obviously is a front man in this. Tom Berenger, I think Tom Berenger has more face time than you're letting on. He's clearly
He
a
is a
member of the
post
team.
I felt he was a very one-dimensional character.
You
I
got
mean,
the great
and
Paul,
cliche,
the
too.
great Paul Freeman who played Balak, in Raiders of the Lost Ark and was in Long Good Friday.
And he's also in Mighty Morphin Power Rangers.
And then you had like a nice performance
He
by
is a-
Simon Blakely who plays the reporter who tries to find out what's going on there. He played Watson in the movie we reviewed a
This is
few
a
episodes
very
back.
depressing
Private Life
movie,
of
though.
Sherlock
Yes,
Holmes. It's a
it's
very
very-
depressing. We talked about
You guys got a blue
Play Dirty
collar.
was nihilistic. This isn't so much nihilistic as it's really, really cynical and depressing. Although it has a bit of a interestingly redeemable ending, kind of, Christopher Walken has a shot at redemption. He takes it, so to speak.
Yeah, the DVD actually, by the way, just to let you know, is an international cut, which actually runs about 11 minutes longer than the theatrical. It's a really good little movie. I mean, it's not perfect, but I like the quite a bit.
I found Tom Berenger's character a little cliched. The guy that whose character cannot function in society. So the only time he feels like he's living is by going back into the action or the shit. I mean, when he has that line about how he doesn't like seeing his wife getting all fat and because she's pregnant or whatever, it's like, all right, that's a little over the top. But
Jeff, go ahead. I know you have a lot to say about it.
I don't really have a lot to say. I just didn't like it as much as you did. I mean, I thought it was just okay. I liked certain aspects of the film, but as a whole, as you said, it was depressing. That's what it was like. Sitting through the film was kind of depressing.
Well, I like they show them as blue collar like workers. These people.
Yeah, I don't mind that. That was one of the before they went over. That was the aspect of the film I liked. After that, film kind of lost me, or I just thought, okay, this is okay, but I just really didn't enjoy it that much.
you didn't enjoy the barely the two scene, not cameo, but the two scenes that Ed O'Neill had.
No, I did not enjoy Ed O'Neill as
And
a
I just
mechanic.
want to ask you guys this, especially you, to see if you noticed it. Did you see Dogs of War recently?
Fairly recently.
Okay, what's very, very interesting, if you blink, you miss him, but he is in it for like a second, and you hear his voice, and you're like, holy shit, that's who it is. And then you look at the credits, and that is Jim Broadbent.
Oh, really?
Jim Broadbent
part?
plays the cameraman for the journalist, the British journalist.
Oh.
But he's in it for like
interesting,
half of a second.
Interesting.
And I'm thinking, wow, Jim Broadbent, one of his first films.
Well, we don't have much time, guys. So what of the four? What are your favorites? What is your favorite?
Well, I have the fond affection for Wild Geese.
I
I would say the best film of the lot is Play Dirty.
I would say Play Dirty, and I gotta say I really do like Wild Geese. So whatever.
I like the Wild
And I like
Geese.
I like
That's
them
my
all, to
favorite.
be honest with you. But Wild Geese is great. My least favorite of all of them was Dark of the Sun.
Tears,
Sorry, Dark of
Tears
the Sun,
of
Tears
the
of the Sun, Mercenary movies. Sorry, but I like them all basically. I think they're all very good. Can't go wrong. Actually, another film you might want to check out quick. Oh, we're out of time. Men of War, which is with Dolph Lundgren, is actually written by John Sayles and actually takes Mercenaries too. Actually, very interesting little movie. Not
Always
perfect.
going for the cheap movie.
It's John Sayles.
Product
It's
placement.
also
He always
Dolph
used that as
Lundgren.
an excuse.
All right,
John
until
Sayles.
next
Uncommon
week.
Value. I want to
Check us
throw
out.
that in.
That's a fun movie. Blaster.
You're so
let's
grumpy.
get
Transformers with Josh Duhamel that had the army unit that I couldn't believe was a real army unit.
Wow, he's so handsome.
What the hell did he just get excited about?
No, I was. Remember, he kept
What'd you
asking me
do?
what model army, and it was like trans.
Hi, I'm Edwin Samuelson, and welcome to the CineFiles. We're back again, yet with another new show. This time we'll be talking about Soldiers for Hire, aka Mercenaries, aka Ronin soldiers. But before I begin, let me introduce my co-host. To my left, Mr. Eric Cohen.
Ronin soldiers.
To his left, Jeff Galashaw, and to his left,
How are you doing?
Michael Phelps. But before I begin, let me just give us a little rundown what we're talking about today. We're talking about Soldier for Hire films. Basically, after
Soldier of Fortune.
Facts. He
So
said he
there
couldn't
you
see
go.
the 3D, ironically. But this is one of his. This was his final film. It's produced by Harry Saltzman, who, if that name sounds familiar to you, was co-producer of the many of the James Bond films up until Live and Let Die. But let's start off with this one. This one is a British-made Dirty Dozen ripoff, really, isn't it?
Sorta. It feels, it reminds me a lot more of something like The Wild Bunch, where you have like two key characters and the rest are just like, scrappy, kind of like, we really don't want to be working with these guys kind of characters.
It does feel like the Dirty Dozen in the sense that you're dealing with
Soldier of Fortune is another good term.
mercenaries.
Actually, you could also call them Ronin. And actually, the term Ronin comes from the ancient samurai times where soldiers would...
Samurai-
This is just Edwin showing off.
No,
his
no, no, I just
Japanese
think it's very
knowledge.
And we're not even reviewing Ronin.
No,
the
no,
movie.
I'm just I'm giving you the term where Ronin comes
Ronin
from.
means samurai without a master.
Exactly. Very good. After the wars in Japan, the samurais the wars be over and they'd have no employment, so they would become soldiers for hire, kind of like Yojimbo. Anyway, these are the same type of films. After, I guess, World War, soldiers become available for jobs and they would take out personal contracts. All right, shut the fuck up. What's the first movie do?
What did we talk? Shall we start with Play Dirty?
Play Dirty.
Yeah, Play Dirty is a great
All
one
right.
because that's around the World War II era.
Play Dirty.
Play Dirty.
Not really a mercenary film. It's more like a
Dirty Dozen.
Men on a Mission kind of thing, which was the original name I wanted to call this.
Well, go ahead, call it.
episode.
Okay, Man on a Mission. then.
Men on a Mission.
This film was directed
Mercenaries on a
by.
Mission.
This film was directed by Andre de Toff, who, and this was his last film, he was a director who actually had one eye, and he directed a 3D film, and he couldn't see the 3D effects, and that film was
And it's
House of
considered
Wax.
one of the best 3D films ever made.
He had a House of Wax.